Oh my goodness, Jim, we're still talking about Lower Decks. Where's your huge hat, man?
I can't wear it every night. And plus, now that it's getting warmer, like it was hot today in Virginia, and I just didn't want to wear that big giant foam hat.
Okay,
right?
I'll give you a pass.
So far, we're still trying to not turn on the air conditioning just yet because we're not ready to go into the summer, right? And so it was hot today. We got the fans running, and it's just like, I don't want to wear a big foam hat tonight. I mean, you guys have seen it. I'll probably put it on, for a future episode or something. But for now, it
got quite the social media buzz.
Yeah, I'm paying love to the Pioneer tonight because I know Aaron couldn't join us tonight because he's got other stuff going on.
All right, we appreciate that.
But show some love to your show, man.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. Of course, Pioneer is one of the greatest Star Trek Adventures ships of the line. Anybody who wants to hear more about it, they can go to Continuing Missions, type in Pioneer, and all our episodes are there. We're in our 5th season, but we are not here to talk about Pioneer tonight. We are here to talk about Lower Decks as we continue on our mission of breaking down what is probably going to be one of the hottest books of the year. Had a lot of demand for it. All over social media, people are saying when it's coming out. And as you all know, it's out. And so let's jump into it. I'm Michael Dismuke. I'm a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG and a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 site for Star Trek Adventures RPG. And of course, let's introduce the king of Packlids, Jim Johnson.
Hey, everybody. Jim Johnson, project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Modiphius Entertainment. Low these many years, co-host on this year's show with Michael Dismuke, and excited to be here tonight to talk more about Lower Decks. Michael, you said the book is already out. I'm not sure based on the timing. Like, I'd have to go look at the schedule to find out when this episode is actually going to air, but I don't.
This episode. This episode is airing on May 26th, so you're probably right.
Yeah. Not quite yet.
All right.
Pretty soon, though. Pretty darn soon, but not quite yet. And when I say pretty soon, I mean the pre-orders the first week of June, and then the book itself will be out at Gen Con. So the book itself not quite there yet. Although where the heck is it? I did get
rub it in. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I'll wait on that. Let's finish this bit and then introduce our guest. You know him, you love him. Al, introduce yourself.
How's it going? Al Spader, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures. Wrote a bunch of little stuff all over this book. It was a blast to do, and I'm excited to dig a little deeper into some of the stuff in here.
Fantastic.
Also, Al Spader, co-author of the world-building 2D20 RPG Sentience, which is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. There's a quick start and a core book available. It will be well worth your time, especially if you are into 2D20. And sentient robots and great science fiction, moral dilemmas, moral questions, life, humanity, quasi-humanity, all that stuff. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah, I picked my robot name when I get to playing the game, Al. I've already figured out who I want to play. So I'm ready to go. I've called them Gadgets Galore. I just think that's it. Right? Okay, so save that for me because I want to come play in your game. All right. Cool. All right. So let's get into it. We are in chapter 3. Living the Life is the title of chapter 3. I do have to say that I did write a lot of it, but we did have Al also write a lot of it. There are mission briefs, which we're not going to cover because we hate spoilers. So there's a big bad box of 10 mission briefs in here to really help people in chapter 3. Jim, anything you want to say before we launch into talking about it?
Yeah, not to contradict you, but the mission briefs are not in chapter 3. They are in a later chapter. So,
I was doing to see if you were paying attention, and you caught me. So good, very good. I want to make sure he's doing his job as project manager.
No, so yeah, the mission briefs come later in the game mastering chapter. That's like chapter 6 or 7.
All right.
Tonight, Lower Decks, chapter 3, Living the Life. Or Lower Decks, the first subchapter called Living the Life. And to set this up a little bit, the remit for this chapter was to talk about the Lower Decks, not so much the TV show and those characters, but like the Lower Decks experience on a Starfleet ship or other polities ships. Like, what is the life like for a junior officer serving in Starfleet? We see a taste of this, actually a pretty good taste of it in the Next Generation. in the episode titled, fittingly enough, Lower Decks, where we get to see the focus on the junior officers and how they perceive the senior officers. Like I remember there's a scene of them in 10 Forward, and they're watching Riker and other people like doing stuff, and like, ooh, it's Riker, and it's like, oh, he's the commander, and blah blah blah. And so you get that sense of there's lower deck stuff going on. And then of course the series, the Lower Deck series, is all about Lower Decks and that whole experience. And so this chapter is really squarely focused on the expectation that the players are coming to the game playing a junior officer. You're an ensign, you're a Lieutenant JG. You don't have a huge amount of responsibility yet because you are presumably early in your career, and you are growing, you are learning. Here's the things that you need to think about and expect as a role player, because you got to get this up in your head so that you can, authentically role play your character as a junior officer, as opposed to the senior staff, which is what we are very much used to watching all the shows and, all the other RPGs that have come before. And even Star Trek Adventures, when it first started out, it was all about you're the captain, you're the senior staff, you're the XO, the chief engineer, et cetera, et cetera. So very different perspective. And so we really wanted to aim this chapter specifically at those players and those characters, just to give you just as many tools and insights as possible.
Yeah, but to let people know that even if you're not playing Lower Deckers, I did take an effort to write it in a way that if you are a senior officer, a commanding officer, you know how to mentor the Lower Deckers into, and we can get into some of the details of it. But I know, like Al, we play all the time together, and he plays a commanding officer, a senior officer on our starship. But boy, do they partner with cadets and lower ranked people, oftentimes mentoring them into other positions. And so we wanted to incorporate that into this chapter.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that this is really about a difference in rank and role on a ship, really. And like I think about there was an episode of Voyager where Tuvok is punished and has to bring those Maquis around or Maquis around and train them. And I felt like that was a different way of looking at a Lower Decks type of story, right? The juxtaposition of, these low-ranking people that don't know the ship well and whatnot, and your commanding officer.
Exactly. So what was really cool about this too, I'll tell you, Jim, some insight why I really like doing this chapter was in my day job, I work in organizational development. So one of the divisions underneath me is talent development, which is training and career pathing and succession planning. So this was like when I saw this chapter, and I know, for those of you who don't know, Jim will oftentimes offer up the outline to the group of writers. He says, where are you leaning into? What do you like? He lets us divvy it up. This was one that I was like, oh, okay, I got about career pathing. And so I was able to use a lot of those mechanics we use in the human resources in order to lean into this and make it so it's really realistic. So anybody who's reading this chapter, you're going to be like, whoa, this is kind of like what they do at my work if they have some sort of training program. Or if you're in the military, I went and did a lot of research with how the Navy does promotions and transfers and reassignments. And that's so all of you who are reading it, if it sounds a little familiar, especially if you're in the Navy, we did lean back on Navy tradition.
Yeah. I absolutely felt that kind of corporate feel to this in some cases. And like, cause I brought some of it into it too, when I was doing some of the revisions. And it's just like, because it feels right? It feels like Starfleet. Like there are career paths you can take, and there are certain skills that you have to develop in order to advance into your career. And it's true now in real time. If you're in a job, whether it's corporate or not corporate, white collar, blue collar, whatever. And then in Starfleet, certainly this is stuff that more than likely happens, even though they don't necessarily focus on it in the shows, right? It's there, and like you get hints of it, like when Riker and Troy meet to discuss personnel reviews, right? It's like it only happens like once or twice in the show, but you know that those characters do that all the time, and they just didn't choose to focus on it during the course of the series all that much. But like, if you're the first officer player or you're the counselor player, then that's an easy subplot that you can drop right into your character and use it anytime you need to in a campaign, and say, oh, I've got tonight's episode's a little slow for me. Hey GM, I want a subplot scene. I'm going to be with the counselor in the lounge. We're talking crew evaluations. Have some junior officer come up. There's a scene. Boom, you got a scene. You're off and running. GM can drop in some hints, some subplots, get a B-side story going on or something. throw in a mission brief, whatever. So anyway, yeah.
And yet Lower Decks does it every episode now. Every episode they're talking about promotion. That's basically what Boimler talks about all the time. And that's his chief concern. So anything else, Al, before we jump into the chapter and talk about some of the highlights?
No, I think that like really the promotion aspect, like you said, it's a very much a driving force of Boimler specifically. So I think that we covered that pretty well in here.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the first thing it opens up is of course about a career in Starfleet. So what do you have to look forward to in chapter 3 if you're picking up this book? Or no, let's not say if, when you pick up this book. First, like we were talking about, it's promotability. Really, the 3 things that go on an officer's record are education, experience, and special commendation. Social skills is also covered in here too. So we know we've seen a lot of brown nosing happen in Lower Decks. So I wanted to cover that there. And then we go ahead and talk about transfers and field promotion. So basically all the ways a junior officer can move up the ranks, which is so important. I thought, as Jim always challenges us to make every paragraph a whole episode in itself, if you had to make an adventure of it. I really wanted to make it so that game masters getting a hold of this, or like Jim said, players getting a hold of this who are senior officers, could actually take a paragraph of this and focus on some of the supporting characters that might be on your ship.
Yep, and just rereading this, you're right, Michael, that a lot of this is applicable to like mid-career officers as well as junior officers, right? Because if you're a lieutenant commander, you're probably further along on your career path. You still might get transferred. You still might get a field promotion. Some of these things still might apply to you. So it's not necessarily just focused on Lower Decks officers. There is enough material in here that it could apply to other characters as well.
Yeah. We talk about career pathing too. And some people might wonder what that means. It kind of means like when you get to a job, sometimes they're going to say, what promotion do you want? Or do you want to take any lateral moves into another department? This is something I know we've done in our game. I'll let Al actually talk about one of his characters who started as a helm officer, but early on in the game, right when he introduced him, he told me, I want this person to eventually become a captain.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. The character was originally a lieutenant, and we put him through some rigorous interactions, and now he's the first officer on the ship. I do like that we created a story arc out of the former XO not liking to give promotions, and how and realistically speaking, a character shouldn't have promotions every other session that you play, right? And there's a little bit of guidance in here about that, and how you might get a field promotion for a scene or two, things like that. But realistically, I mean, this characters, I mean, you look at Worf over the course of his career, it took many years for him to start advancing, and getting promotions and whatnot. So yeah, I think you do a nice job laying that out in here, Michael, of, be mindful of this and celebrate it when it does happen.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And it should also be something that's planned. Like one of the things we talk about is you can, as a cadet, which we saw Tendi do, jump from the medicine department over to science. And of course, we had that one episode where Rutherford, Samantha Rutherford, was going and tasting a little bit of it all, right? So that's the benefits of a Lower Decks campaign, is you have a really good reason to be jumping and putting your fingers into every department, which I think, Jim, Al, what you think about that? Maybe I'm a first-time player to Star Trek. Maybe I'm not even playing a Lower Decks game. I might choose a cadet or an ensign just for this reason, that I can kind of try out all the different roles and decide what I like.
I mean, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just going to say, I was just agreeing, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing that with Uhura on Strange New Worlds. Right. She's been going from station to station and experiencing engineering and, to see if this is the life that she wants. And that's kind of like her arc that we're seeing. And I think that is a really good entry level concept for someone to learn what Star Trek is all about.
Yeah.
I think Lower Decks is really kind of nicely set up as a gateway to Star Trek in a lot of ways. And I don't know that we necessarily intended to do that with this book for Star Trek Adventures, but it could certainly be viewed in that way, where if you got a bunch of folks at your game table, physical or virtual, they maybe watch a couple episodes of Star Trek. They really don't know much about it. They kind of like, I don't know what I want to play. So what do I do? Right. You could start them all off as junior officers, put one at con, one in science, one in engineering, one in security, and just let them go. Like, we'll just start throwing episodes and adventures at them. And if a couple episodes in, they're like, you know what? Flight control is kind of boring. I want to switch over to security and fire some phasers or do some fisticuffs or something. It's like, sure, just swap around and play with it. And I think it would be much easier to do that in a Lower Decks kind of a campaign experience than it would be to actually like, okay, you're the chief of security. You have a certain kind of level of expectations that you should know what you're doing. I mean, not that we want that to be a barrier to anybody playing the game, but it's just a different level of game, right? And the Lower Decks show, of course, is a little like the characters are a little, what's the right word? It's like they're not quite as polished. They're a little irreverent. They're a little profane, which is totally fine. And it's just got that feel that you feel a lot at a game table, like where you're throwing jokes back and forth and you're convincing and you're just having a great time. And I think like more than anything else, that's what I would want to be. If I was stationed on a Starfleet vessel, I'd be having as much fun as I possibly could, in addition to doing my duties, because holy cow, I'm in space. I'm in Starfleet. I get to do all this cool stuff. I think Aaron mentioned that a few episodes back, but it would just be so cool and fun. And like, why not just be exuberant and enjoy the moment?
Yeah, Al had mentioned the career of Worf, but it's interesting. Coincidentally, on page 61, I put in the illustrious career of Geordi LaForge to show how we've seen somebody on screen rank up. And then, of course, I did all my research, and then Picard comes out season 3. Spoiler alert, everyone. He's now a Commodore. So I don't know, Jim, if that's going to even make, I know it's probably not going to make the print edit at this point, but will it even get in there?
If we ever do I don't know, like we already know that Lower Decks will be around for at least 5 seasons, right? Because season 4 comes out this year. They've already been greenlit for season 5. I don't know that we would revise this book, but we could very easily do a new, another follow-on book that covers seasons, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know if we're going to.
All right, so everyone. You heard it here first, everyone. Get a little black marker and write in at the bottom, LaForge. Yeah, get a big fat Sharpie and just write it in there about LaForge is now a Commodore, and that'll complete that list. That sometimes happens.
Picard changed it.
Exactly.
We covered our butts because in the introduction to the book, we say, hey, canon might change. Like we can only do so much. This whole book is a snapshot in time. And it could be completely rendered irrelevant by season 4, season 5, whatever. Yeah. But for now, anyway, it's doing the job. But yeah, I wish Michael, I wish we had the knowledge and the time to tweak that very last bullet point on Geordi's career, but it just didn't work out. So such is life.
I do love that on that very same page, the sidebar about promotion as punishment.
Yeah.
That's really fun, and how some people might think that if I could just become a lieutenant junior grade, life would be so much easier. Not realizing that there's paperwork involved and there's more jobs that you have to do and things like that. And I think that happens like in real life too, right? Sometimes people get promotions and then they're way over their heads. Yeah. I really enjoyed that sidebar being there.
Well, what do they call that? The Peter principle, where somebody is promoted beyond their ability to.
Yeah, we say that you're promoted to your highest level of ineptitude. Like at some point you can't be that good, right? And I'm always afraid when I'm getting promoted at work. It's like, oh, this is the one that's going to make me look like an idiot. This is the one that I don't know how to do. One of the things you could do for if you game masters out there have. I don't want to say unruly. That's the only word that I can think of right now. If you have an unruly player who's basically saying, well, you should be doing that and you should be doing that, write a mission where they're in charge and give them some punk ensigns underneath them that sound just like them.
Yeah.
So I know we played a game at my tabletop game where we had a captain who did not follow Starfleet orders for several episodes. And so I wrote a specific mission where 2 people followed his lead on his crew and we're also insubordinate, and they're called up before JAG and he's not. And that became I made sure it was the pivotal point of that story. So this is your chance. Promotion is punishment, to show people that there's a reason why senior officers act the way they do, on behalf of Starfleet. Of course, my favorite, one of my favorite sidebars in here, Al, has to do about, naked people on page 62. Never before Lower Decks had I seen so much nudity, so much, not even just nudity. It's not even like National Geographic nudity. It was just blatant, flagrant, throw it out there nudity. It's insane. So I could not ignore that fact.
Yeah, and I like that you put like some little safety conversation topics about it as well, right? Because this is clearly something that you should talk about with your table, even if your table is okay with running a Lower Deck style game. Approach them each about the concept of nudity and ridiculous things like that.
Especially if you're LARPing.
Yeah. I think you got to really enjoy the piece of art on this page, by the way.
How did you find, Jim? Did you find that piece of art? Where did you get that? For those of you who are tuning into the podcast, it's Shaxx totally bare butt naked, his butt showing. It's very cute. Yeah. It's very Simpson-esque.
Yeah, it's the Shaxx butt that we talked about. I think there was an episode where Shaxx and like most of the crew were naked at one point, doing things. And the graphic designer isolated that bit of Shaxx and dropped it right into the layout. I mean, looking at it, I think it's great. The vestiges of the prude in me wonder if we should have put maybe a black box over it, but it's not.
It's a butt.
Everybody has butts. It's not a big deal.
It's a cartoon butt.
The cartoon butt.
That's amazing how the graphic designer isolated that.
Yeah. Well,
no one caught that. No one caught that pun. No. Oh my God. That was so good. Rewind. If all of you listening to this missed it, rewind and just try to play that again. All right. Another thing, this is actually what I wrote here I think it was an expansion on something, Al, you wrote in the player's guide about what to do with downtime. I think you wrote some sections about that, or was it Utopia Planitia?
Utopia Planitia, yes.
Yeah. You wrote some stuff in Utopia Planitia about what to do with downtime, but that was a focus on senior officers. And so I looked at that and reworked it about what to do with downtime if you're a junior officer. Because I don't know, are they more bored? I know they don't get as much holodeck time, so I figured they have to get really creative about what to do in common areas.
Well, we know it is established that their replicators aren't nearly as good as the upper deckers, so they probably get creative with their culinary styles and things like that. So that's kind of fun.
Exactly. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in there about hobbies, side projects, stretch assignments, and really your crew who you live with, they become family because you get so close to them. So a lot, again, just for the purpose of this is B story, B plot. So that when you're playing a Lower Decks campaign, you can't be in the action all the time. And you're like, well, what do my people do on the other side? There's every line in there is something you could be doing, whether it's a hobby or a book you're reading or some sort of interaction with crew hanging out at the bar. The stuff that I would figure cadets and ensigns do in that situation. All right. There's a favorite part here. So I want to ask you, Jim, I had added this last. I remember it was like a late minute ad. It was page 63. And it's a new game mechanic that I think could make some pretty fantastic adventures. And that's programming a holodeck situation. And it came up because we were watching the Badgie episode. So as we were writing this, somehow Badgie, I think, came into the scene. I was like, well, how do you program a holodeck simulation? And you let me add this in, which I appreciate. What was your take on having a new game mechanic like that?
I mean, I think it's something that we haven't really touched on holodecks a whole lot in the game over 7 years. Like I know folks have been asking for holodeck, mission briefs and holodeck programs and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, but you don't really need rules for it. Just say you're in the holodeck, you just make it up and you're up and running. and then complications occur, or start spending some threat and some momentum to make things go wrong or have things glitch or whatever. You don't really need a whole different rule set. But I think what this does is it gives us just some more tools to throw at to give players something to do and for game masters to challenge them with. And I think certainly Jordy and Barclay and Paris, and I mean, we got plenty of examples from canon of people tinkering with the holodeck and coming up with different programs and different ideas and stuff. And this fits right into it. And I think clearly using Rutherford as an example for creating Badgie and then things going horribly wrong is just fits right in, right? So no, I think it's good. Hopefully gamers will make use of this and have fun with it.
Yeah, like if you want to create your own action adventure movie that you are the star of to role play through, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, the page design is beautiful, but I don't know which graphic designer did it too, but it really pops out, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. So Chris Webb is one of the staff designers at Modiphius. He was on call for this particular book and did a fabulous job. I love that most of it's got a white background with dark text, but every now and then he dropped in a black background and just to make it pop a little bit, make it change it up. And this particular page, because it's all about the holodeck, is predominantly black background with light colored text. But the holodeck, of course, has a lot of yellow gridding on it, right? So he added a lot of yellow to this, and I think the yellow on top of the black really makes it pop, and it's just fun to look at, right? And plus, you got Badgie over there, so you can't really go wrong with it.
Exactly. Yeah. Tell Chris Webb, awesome job on that. Cool. As usual, we like to add tables, random tables, just to mix it up. And we know there's a lot of RPGers who really enjoy using tables. So on page 65, mandatory bonding time. I did not write this. I don't know who wrote this, Jim.
I believe Rachel Cruz wrote this one. She wrote a lot of the sidebars and some of the tables and some of the other bits and pieces throughout the book. And this was all her doing. And I love it because this riffs off the episode where Mariner and Tendi go off on a girl trip, and they go have their whole exciting experience. I think that might have been the girl trip where they have to go retrieve something for Dr. Tavana and get into a lot of hijinks along the way, and you learn more about Tendi in that whole episode. So it was like, well, can we come up with like 20 totally random things that lower deckers can do together to connect, to know each other, to bond? This could almost be episodes unto themselves, right? Or whole sessions unto themselves. So it's 20 random things. Some of them, I just love so many of these, and I just can't wait to see what folks came up with. I think this was one of my favorite tables in the book, honestly. This and the one about the farm. I think both of those were just so much fun, just to look at all the possibilities on there. But just a couple quick examples here: lounge or bar chat, holodeck theater, scavenger hunt, Klingon acid rock concert, and holodeck beach day were some of my favorites that came up. And there's some descriptive text for each one, so it's not just the title. There's a little bit of descriptive text for you to think about. Did either of you have any particular favorites that jumped out at you?
I mean, I want to know what a Klingon acid rock concert is like, because that sounds phenomenal. I think that would be, you could have a lot of fun with that for sure.
That's the one I was thinking about too. I was thinking I liked Holodeck Murder Mystery, because I really thought this is actually kind of an opportunity where, say, I don't know if you've all had this happen before, but everyone comes over your house intending to play RPG and they end up playing a different game for whatever reason. And I thought, well, you know what? Let's make it a holodeck episode if we do that. And especially if it was a murder mystery, like, go ahead. Your friend says, bring a murder mystery. Okay, but I understand it's going to be a holodeck program. And that would be a cool way to write it into the story and still be playing Star Trek Adventures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, they're just story starters, right? Like, these are just concepts to get your brain rolling. Like, if you want to do something fun with bonding time, just roll a d20 and there's one for you, and you can roll with it, build upon it.
Yeah. I just had an idea, Al. If our gaming group ever actually ends up at a Comic-Con together, we're going to pretend that's a holodeck program, and they're all walking around they've gone back in time to go to a 21st century Comic-Con. Wouldn't that be fun? Mm-hmm. And we all have to be in character for a portion of the day. All right, cool. All right, chapter 3.2. You want to introduce that, Jim?
Sure thing. So moving on. So that was all covered. Chapter 3.1, good chunky chapter. Lots of great stuff in it. We move on to chapter 3.2. This is difference of opinion. And this whole chapter is all about the lower decks experience, but not on Starfleet. So if you're playing a Klingon game, you want to play Klingon lower deckers. There's advice and insights in here about that, plus some plot hooks and stuff. Pakleds, Romulans, Ferengi, Borg. If you want to play, that was so awesome. The other day, I was like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. Vulcans, et cetera, et cetera. So like a bunch of different polities. Some of which were in that one episode, Wejduj. I think I pronounced that right, maybe not. But that episode where they introduce lower decks on several different other ships, just to get a sense of what that's like. It's like, well, those could very easily be campaigns in their own rights. There's nothing saying you got to play Star Trek Adventures always from the Starfleet perspective. There's plenty of other species out there. There's plenty of other ways to play the game. So this is just giving you a bunch of pages and some insights into some of those other polities and what you can do with them. And it's opened up. It's opened up by a Boimler. I'm sorry, not Boimler. A Mariner sidebar. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about what you were thinking when you were putting this together.
Yeah, well, so I didn't write every single one. I remember, I think I wrote KDF, Pakleds, Vulcan. I know I wrote those for that. Again, just lower decks for other polities is the point of you can go ahead and play other games. We always try to make it so people can have as flexible a game as possible. I do admit that Wejduj is, I don't know how it's pronounced again like you, but definitely my favorite episode. It's the one I've watched the most. And then when I got to write this chapter, I sat down and I just really took as many notes as possible. My favorite being the Vulcans, is because the Vulcans' passive aggressiveness is just so hilarious. Like they are so hilarious, that episode, and how passive aggressive they are. And so really get into it. I encourage people, if you're playing a different species, don't act like a human. Jump into it. And I don't know who wrote the section on Tellarites. I'm going to guess it's Aaron Paulier, because he's kind of our king of Tellarites, right? Yep. Again, the same thing is like, if you are playing a Tellarite, get into it. And especially a lower decker, because they're going to be even less refined than a more senior officer Tellarite. They haven't been trained yet. So just a really fun chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. So then after that, we get into 3.3 lower decks. This is doing the work. So this goes into some detail on you're a lower decks officer assigned to a ship, whatever your polity, like what's your job? What do you do? You're not just there to exist. You've actually got a role to play, and that might change. You might get different tasks, like we see on the show. The four main characters perform any number of different duties over the course of the 3 seasons. Some of it quite menial, some of it quite gross, and then some of it a little bit more uplifting. So this is a big chunky list of possible things you can do. So I'd love to hear your insights, Michael, on what research did you go into pulling this list together, and how did you make it fun so that wasn't just a list of jobs, right?
Right. Well, the thing is that, of course, there's the piece about anomaly consolidation duty, which I had a part of an episode. So I said I had to include that here because that's a dirty job that lower deckers have to do. But I was like, well, what are, I don't want to make everyone like a science specialist or a engineering technician. So I really got into the schematics of a ship and thought about what are all the different jobs available. And then I did major research about every type of job that you find on a Navy ship. I said, okay, whoa, that just opened up a whole bag. Believe me, I edited a lot because there are a lot of different duties on a ship. But then I said, how does that translate into the 24th century? Like 24th and 25th century. So my goal is that players, when they go to select their job role, that they don't just go with the standard that we've seen already in Star Trek, but they actually go to this list in a chapter and pick something that's so detailed and seems so boring. It's probably something that's kind of monotonous. And that's where they have time after finishing their daily duties to go try out other tasks and stuff like that. But there's 4 pages, 1, 2, 3 pages of different duties that people can look into. So again, Navy tradition and just the people who have to hit the widgets and what's nots of a spaceship. Any favorite ones that you saw, Al? That you?
I really like soil specialist. Just like it's just so specific, you know what I mean? Like, and I really like, I feel like that would be a fun character to start talking about the soil when you get on a planet, and then just have everybody just kind of like stare like how does this matter, you know what I mean? Like yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun to play with.
And that's a real job in the Navy, just so you know. That's a real job.
Yeah, and the all the encryption stuff is really cool. I like that you got Yeoman in here. Yeah, just a fun list of stuff.
Jim, did you like any that stood out to you?
I thought, I mean, just the ones that were kind of different kind of came out to me, like the religious program specialists, the paralegals, and what was the other one? There was one other one that called out to me. I don't remember which one it was now, I'm afraid.
Career advisor,
even career advisor, right? It's like, no, yeah, you know what? You're a junior officer. You don't really know what you want to do. Well, go talk to the counselor. Go talk to the career advisor. They can probably help you. If your direct supervisor can't help you, then go talk to the resident career advisor and see what kind of ideas they can give you. So I think it's just neat because again, this is an opportunity for players who may not know Star Trek or may not know much about the IP. Like, each person coming to the game has their own set of skills. So maybe they'll say, oh, you know, I want to kind of like get me started with something that I'm already familiar with, right? Maybe there's somebody who happens to be a, know something about engines, and you say, well, okay, well, why don't your ensign's assigned to be a propulsion specialist in this episode, and they can give you a chance to get into the game, get a feel for what an engineer does, and if it doesn't appeal to you, go try something else next episode. So it's just lots of, and if nothing else, this is just a ton of ideas for NPCs.
Well, you know, the three of us are the trio of master riffers, right? So my thing when I was writing this too, let's take like porter, right? So a porter is another word for janitor. Okay. So imagine if you chose porter as your job on the ship, and now you have to come up with 6 focuses around that. So let's do a quick riff, and you each can pick like 2. Well, that would create 6. So like I would have like cleaning supplies and scrubbing as my focuses. And it would be curious to see if I could work those into stories. Scrubbing, can I work that into a story somehow? So I would take cleaning supplies and scrubbing. What would you do, Al? Space.
Maybe,
sorry. Spacewalking's already mentioned in there, by the way.
Maybe plumbing.
Oh, good.
Plumbing might be a fun one to put in with that as well. Sonic shower maintenance.
Ooh, I could write a whole adventure off that. Jim, if you had to riff off of 2 focuses to give this person.
For porters, let's see, perform repair tasks, especially activities relating to the cleanliness and pristine appearance of the interior series vehicle. Well, I think my first focus that comes to mind would be project management, right? Okay. Each of these tasks probably has an orderly process that has to be followed in order for it to be successfully completed. So project management and something like what's the words I'm thinking of? Like when you have when you have a car and you have the instruction manual for that car, right? It tells you what the proper operating,
maintenance procedures,
like a maintenance procedures, like, but not so much maintenance procedures. Like there's got to be some sort of documentation, like a technical document that says, here is the baseline for this vehicle or for this piece of technology. If nothing else, get it back to its baseline. Maybe we've made modifications to it, but like if you're a reporter responsible for making a repair to it, you need to know what the baseline is in order to understand how it works. So I guess technical manuals or
there you go.
Manuals, something like that.
Technical manuals. That's great. That'd be good. Yeah. See, so one thing like that, I said, wow, you could create a whole bunch of stuff, and I could just create adventures off of it. Even like vacuuming. Who vacuums the carpet on the bridge of the Enterprise D?
Well, somebody does.
Yeah, exactly. And we've actually seen it. Remember when that fake maintenance crew, the actor who plays Tuvok, was actually in TNG, and wasn't he vacuuming? I think. I think he was doing something like that. Anyways,
that being said, in Picard season 3, right, we see the little drone bots fixing up the Enterprise. So I think you could probably extrapolate and say, well, you know what? Maybe Starfleet has little Roombas on the ship that are just responsible for just keeping the floor clean. I mean, why not, right? It totally makes sense to me. It's the future. Why wouldn't you have?
And the porter would have basic robotic skills to help repair that. Okay, I like this. Okay, that makes sense. And then, of course, on page 77, this was a pure joy. I will have to give credit to my wife who let me practice this on her, and she was letting me scream at her. So what there's a random, we don't scream in our household. On page 77, though, I created a table called menial tasks for junior officers. And so what you do is roll a D20, and there's 3 columns. The first column is called grab that. The second column is and get to, and the third column is that. And how it works is like this. So if you roll 3 D20s, it could come out like, hey, you stinking little cadet, grab that gravitic caliper and get to updating that EPS manifold. And so it's basically a way for you to play in the game and just get some orders thrown at you really rapidly. So I'm glad you let that in the book, Jim.
I mean, why wouldn't I, right? I mean, this is such a great table, and I even played with it a few times when I was editing it. This is the dangers. If I can digress for just a moment,
please.
This is an example of the dangers of being the line editor on these books, is because when it's the middle of the night and I'm doing my edit, one of my umpteen million edit passes on this, like one of the first times I started going through this, I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go grab my D20s. I grabbed my 3 D20s out of my collection. I sat down, and probably for 20 minutes, I was just screwing around, having fun, coming up with different combinations of this thing and just having fun with it. And then by the time I was done, it was like, 12:30, and I was like, okay, if I don't get any more editing done tonight, I'm going to be behind schedule. So then I had to put my dice away and hunker down and just
right. That's when I screamed to Jim and I said, hey, Jim, grab that keyboard and get to typing out those edits.
Get back to work.
Exactly. So,
but no, I think this is great, and this is almost like this is the lower decks version of a technobabble chart, right? Because it's totally stuff you would hear them yelling on the show to Boimler and to Rutherford and Tendi and stuff. And I think it's great. I'm curious to know how much this will get used in an actual game, and I hope there's some fans out there who liberally sprinkle this into their games, because I totally want to hear stories about it.
There should be at least be one character. Like if they're playing a lower decks game, they should cut this and don't cut it out. Photocopy it, then cut it out. And there should be at least one character who's using this constantly. So he's kind of like the J. Jonah Jameson of the deck of the ship,
And then there's another random. Actually, there's 2 random tables on the next page, on page 78. Side missions for lower deckers. I don't remember if either of you wrote this one or if it was you, Michael. Okay, so tell us a little bit about these 2.
Well, just again, what are we going to do while there's maybe a main adventure going on? I think I love how Lower Decks consistently has a B plot mission going on. And I honestly think the B plot missions are more hilarious than the main mission generally. So this is the opportunity again. So if you're pulling a module and adapting it for Lower Decks or a mission brief, and you're looking for a B plot, this should help do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's 2 different tables here. There's one that's just talking about side missions that may not necessarily have a lot of flair, but could be a really good start to an adventure. And then the other one is generating an event for crew that has just a little more meat to it. Like, so there's some varieties here, and you can probably mix and match between the 2 if you wanted to. But I thought we had the room, so I thought it was worth keeping both of them in there. Because if nothing else, this is 40 more story ideas to throw at game masters and players, and just see what sticks and what excites you for your show.
And as an Easter egg, I love the illustration on that page is the holodeck goo. So whatever they recover in the way of fluid from the holodeck, all the canisters are there. It's a little cringe. Don't spill that.
That's a job, boy, I tell you. And then that brings us to the end of the chapter here, which is Al's contribution to this one anyway. And I thought it was I was a little skeptical initially when I read this. I was like, do we really need this? And I was like, yeah, let's throw it in there. It's Lower Decks. Why not? So, Al, tell us all about your chapter about supervising characters.
Yeah, so this was one of the last ideas that I had come up with. It wasn't in the original outline. I might have been working on some other project at the time that might have like made this click. And I remember that I was looking at the core rule book for supporting characters, and I was reading through it, and it was talking about how like the whole concept of supporting characters is that they are of lower rank than you, and they're someone that you can command around and things like that. When you look at the rules as written, now I know there are lots of homebrew rules that people use where you can just use anybody on the ship as a supporting character. But I thought it might be useful in this game or in this book to talk about the supervising characters are really the support cast, and a supervising character, a commander or lieutenant commander or whoever's in charge, they are much better qualified to do the job than you are in many ways. So I proposed this to Jim, and I modified the creation rules a bit to be able to produce someone who is likely going to be more qualified to do a job than you. And then we see it all the time in Lower Decks, right? Where just randomly, somebody from the bridge crew shows up in a scene, and they're there to help or not in some cases. But I thought this would be a fun way to add flavor to the concept of supporting characters, but instead they're supervisors.
Yeah, brilliant. I loved it. I actually didn't know it was even getting in the book, so I was really happy to see this at the end of the chapter, which was really fun.
Yeah, that's one of the tough. I mean, I guess it's not tough necessarily, but I don't always have the time or the opportunity to share the final manuscripts with you guys before it goes into approvals and layout and everything. So sometimes you just get surprised, right? When the PDFs come out or the books come out or whatever, you're like, hey, where'd that come from? Who wrote that section? That's awesome. And so I guess I'm happy to surprise you guys, but sometimes I wish I could share more of this with you, along the whole journey path or whatever, but doesn't always work out. But yeah, I thought this was like I said, Al, I was a little skeptical at first. I was like, I wasn't sure this really made sense. And I read it and I read it again. And then I read it the third time after a couple of days just to let it settle. And I was like, yeah, this fits. This is good, optional, cool stuff that a Lower Decks crew could have a lot of fun with. And it just adds another layer and nuance to the game, and it just expands the possibilities, right? And after 7 years, we're still finding cool ways to expand the game, and that's all a win. That's always going to be a win. Like at some point, we're gonna stop doing this. I don't know when. Knock on wood. And okay. I'll be able to go back. I'll be able to look at the 40 or 50 books that we have on the shelf and go, wow, I can run Star Trek campaigns for the rest of my life.
Well, I think the thing is too with Living the Life Chapter 3 is I think I've mentioned it. Oh, I mentioned on Delta Flyers where I'm an admiral with Garrett Wong and Bobby Duncan McNeil for their podcast about Voyager episodes. But when I'm watching the show, I'm always watching the people in the background pushing the buttons. I want to know what they're doing. And then also when people are walking through the halls, going left, right, wearing the different color uniforms, or maybe not wearing a uniform, I can stop and be like, what are they doing? What cool room are they going to? And so this is so fun, Chapter 3, Living the Life, because now we get to actually answer that. We get to play it and see what it would be like if we all got on a ship. Our first posting would not be captain. Our first posting would be a low grade posting, unless you're Wesley Crusher, I guess. But other than that, these are fascinating people, and I really look forward to seeing players get in and enrich and just create more world building for Star Trek. There's never been a RPG book that really world builds Lower Decks, correct? Now, I don't mean the TV show. I'm just talking about Lower Decks, like FASA or Decipher. Did they ever dive as deep into Lower Decks as we're doing with Star Trek Adventures?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they never had a Lower Decks series to take advantage of, right? But I know, I'm sure Last Unicorn and Decipher both referenced Lower Decks to some extent, and Last Unicorn Games had a Starfleet Academy, box set. But that was really more focused on cadets than on junior officers. So no, I think this is the first opportunity to really dig deep into junior officers and that whole junior officer experience. And to even go into the detail that you were talking about in terms of like, I mean, what RPG book talks about career pathing? I mean, come on. It's not really a thing that's that much of a focus for a lot of people, but
so cool.
But if you really get into Star Trek and you get into your characters, I mean, not to scare people, but like this is something that you could do, right? You could be a junior officer and say, oh, you know what? And if you're in the right group and you got the right group of people around you, you can say, you know, oh, this ensign, I want to. I mean, just imagine the possibilities of this. I want to role play this character through the ranks to the point where we can run a campaign some point in the future where they are now a captain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, will you go on this journey with me to play this so that I can play this character from ensign to captain over however many years it takes of game time? And if you got a good group of players that are willing to go with you, maybe they got their own career paths and their own aspirations and stuff. And I mean, there's just so much potential there for a really rich game. Now, of course, you know, reality is scheduling will get in the way and babies.
Yeah, but I mean, I risk to say that the majority of people, because Lower Decks is new, the majority of STA players are playing senior officer type games, but this is the book to really richen out your supporting characters and your NPCs. Because to me, I like you said, we had that one TNG episode with Lower Decks. We had that amazing Voyager episode with Lower Decks. Two of them. There were two of them. One with Tuvok training and one with Janeway taking them on the runabout on the Delta Flyer. Those are some of my favorite episodes because again, I'm getting into the background and the world building of the ship. I love the comfort of being inside a starship. I really do, being a homebody. And so if you are playing senior officers, get to know your NPCs, get to love them. I know when we lose an NPC on our game, it's tragic because we've taken a lot of time to make it like family. We're on an Intrepid class, so it's 150 people. You're with 150 people for 5 years. You know their names and you know their habits. And they've really done a good job, my team, getting to flesh out those characters. Why are you laughing, Jim?
I'm gonna let it go because I know you love Voyager and I don't want to be negative, so I'm just gonna let that go.
Whatever, Jim. 7 of 9 came from Voyager.
I don't even. You know what? I'm gonna throw it out there, right? Because the fans are listen to the same way. I don't remember who I was talking to. Mm-hmm. This topic came up in conversation. It might have been a Twitter post. It might have been on Facebook. Like somewhere along the way, somebody was talking about how awesome of a Captain Janeway was because she was like almost the mother figure to her crew, and she cared about them and it was really important, and she shepherded them along through the Delta Quadrant for 7 years, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. There was a bunch of episodes in the last season where she didn't even know the names of the crew on her ship. And I'm like, it's a crew of 150. She should have known every one of them by name, first name basis, day in and day out. Even if she was a Starfleet captain and she wanted to keep it, Starfleet formal and stuff, there was no way that a good captain would not know her entire crew after 7 years.
I don't remember this. I don't know what you're talking about, Jim.
Was that us? I don't remember who. I don't remember. Who
no, it wasn't me. But you're right. You're actually really right. Because if you think about here, I mean, let's talk about this for a second. If you think about it, Intrepid class has 15 decks. That means on a ship that size, there's only an average of 10 people on deck at any time. So imagine being on deck 8 and there's only 10 other people. It's pretty lonely, right? So you could see why people congregate in the mess hall. You can fit half the people right there in the mess hall. So but the reason, you want to know, Jim, the reason why she didn't have time to know everyone's name? Because she was saving lives constantly. She was so exhausted at the end of every episode. She had to 2 to 3 days off in her thing. It was,
or if I want to be really snarky, and I'm going to get hate mail for this, but maybe she was just so overcome with remorse for killing Tuvix that she just didn't want to get to know anybody.
Tuvix. All right.
Anyway, so on that cheerful note, let's wrap this up before I get in any more trouble.
All right. Well, let's go. Al, do you want? Sorry, now my coughing's coming back. Jim's killing me over here. Al, anything before we go to gratitude you want to say about chapter 3?
I mean, it's more tools, right? These are tools. You don't have to use them all, but I can guarantee you that there's one bit in this chapter that you can include in your next session to make it more fun or to make it more realistic or to add drama. And that's why we're doing these type of books, right? To give you more stuff that you can use to make the experience better for everyone.
Sounds good. All right. So let's go into gratitude. I'm going to give it over to Phil Bailey, who submitted Fanboy 3 in Manchester, UK as their favorite brick and mortar. We're all about the brick and mortars out here. So that's who the shout out goes today. How about you, Al? Who's your shout out to?
It's a couple fold. My shout out, it really goes to Jim Johnson and the folks over at Wanderers Haven on Twitch, who allowed me to do my world premiere Sentience 2D20 stream. And that's available. It's on Twitch, and they just posted it on YouTube this week. So it was a lot of fun. And the fact that Jim was right there saying, yeah, I want to play this and play a character on this, that really meant a lot to me. So just the support and love. And Michael, I know you wanted to play, but you were doing some work stuff. So it's been a fun experience, and I can't wait to see where that game goes.
All right. Well, Gadgets Galore is waiting for the next one. She'll come along. All right, Jim.
I want to thank all the writers, producers, people responsible for the Next Generation episode Lower Decks, the 2 episodes that you mentioned in Voyager, and then Mike McMahon and the whole team at Titmouse, and everybody else responsible for putting the Lower Decks series together, because it's added so much new depth and stuff for Star Trek fans to enjoy. And then Paramount giving us the license to add Lower Decks to our license has given us the opportunity collectively to add just a huge variety of new tools for gamers to play with. Whereas you could take a core book and just the Lower Decks supplement, and you are set for years of gaming. You can do senior officers, junior officers, everything in between, any polity, whatever. I think I'm just so excited. I mean, I'm always excited about the new release, but like this one in particular, because I can see this, and we talked about it at the top of the show, I can see this very clearly being a gateway for new gamers and people new to Star Trek to kind of like get into it, get a feel for it, and then go off and running and have fun. So thanks to all those people. Yep. And then finally, thanks to all the fans. Again, without the fans, we would not be doing this after 7 years. We can't do it without the fans. I am so grateful every day for all the support you give to Modiphius and to each other and to the new gamers coming in. Like literally, I see it freaking every day now on all the different social media channels, on the Facebook, the Reddit, the Discord, etc. New people are coming to the game every day saying, oh, I want to get into the game. I've got the core book, or I don't even know what to buy. What do I buy? There's 30 products on the shelf. What do I do? I'm lost, and there's too much. And it's like, and the fans more often than not take it upon themselves to say, okay, well, here's A, B, C, D, and E, and like there's some great fans out there who are creating YouTube videos and stuff, helping guide people to what supplements to buy first, and then what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, etc. So always grateful that we have such a great fan base for this game, and they're so supportive of each other, because like that does a lot of my job for me, right? And I can't put a value on that other than to thank fans every time we put out a new book. It's a love letter and a thank you. It's like, okay, thanks for all the stuff you've been doing. Here's more tools. Here's more stuff to play with. Have fun. Do more stuff. And it hasn't gotten tired. We haven't gotten tired of it yet. They haven't gotten tired of it yet. So
that's right.
Thank you, fans.
All right. So for all you new fans, remember, Jim loves Janeway. That's all you need to know. Jim, it's like alliteration. It's so easy to remember. Jim loves Janeway. All right. So with that, we go out IDIC.
So live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. We'll talk to you all next time.